Thursday, September 1st, in our last game of Dungeons & Dragons, rain pours and lightning flashes beyond a pile of crushed bodies. The Kraken Priest finishes his summoning spell. Tentacles start to extend from the sea far below, 100 feet below from the sea. The ropes have been broken from the platforms, yet 4 children remain tied and under the control of the cultists. Will our heroes be able to save the children, or will they be defeated and perhaps sent to the clutches of this Kraken? Let's find out right after this. Stay with me. High atop the cliffs of purple rocks, our heroes had adventured. They had rowed their boat into the island and up the stormy weather and the lightning crashing, and they make their way up the path up to this village that's abandoned. And they talk to a hag, and she sends them to this worship, this temple area where cultists have gathered. 80 plus cultists have gathered to doing their dark ritual and sending seemingly 4 young children tied and bound, seemingly going to be sacrificed to some sea god. But our heroes come in to save the day, and do they? Well, we began the night with many of the cultists already been killed. I think there were 60 of the 80, but there were still 20 some left. And as the battle begins, our Gloin, I remember, came in and he tried to make a grab for those 2 of the children, but he failed. He clipped one, did just a little damage to one of the tentacles, but he was unable to grab the kids. He swoops around and he picks up the other 2 that were not in the grasp of the tentacles and flies them to safety. Meanwhile, with a crash of lightning, a handful of sea spawn rise from the dead cultists to engage in the battle, and Ruckus goes to the edge of the cliff, and he is one of the tentacles that was holding one of the cultists is let go into the water below and grabs Ruckus. This Kraken, this sea priest, this Kraken Priest, through the voice of Slocrethel, the voice in Ruckus's head says, "Join me. You are a god amongst children, and we will be powerful. I'll make you more powerful than your wildest dreams," and pulls Ruckus down into the water with this dark temptation, and with the promise of perhaps breaking this tide, this requirement of the dark god of no longer having to give the tithe of death to the dark god, but if he would just be the servant of Slocrethel. And Ruckus denies this, takes a huge bite out of the tentacle, denies this Kraken, denies this Slocrethel, and as he's trying to make away, this Kraken grasps it and gives him this tattoo that turns red with angry red color, as he has defied Slocrethel and made himself an enemy of the Kraken god. Meanwhile, back up on the cliff, the rest of the gang deals with the rest of the cultists, including the sea priest, who tries to jump off the cliff, but Veronica grabs him with one of her spells and pulls him in and destroys him. After which, with everyone in safety, Gloin goes back in and destroys the altar from which they were doing their chants. With the cultists handled, our party goes into town and seeks refuge in the tavern that was there, and they are trying to have a long rest. But before we got to that, Ruckus, who had been in the sea, made his way back up to the village and shared with the group that the Hordebreaker, their submarine, was not there, was nowhere to be seen. And they figure out that indeed it makes sense that the submarine would flee on the sight of a creature as big as a Kraken, and it tried to go hide while the Kraken was doing its thing. which it did. And they decide to go back in the morning to try to catch the submarine. But until then, they try to take a long rest. And in the third shift, the couple handfuls of cultists that had fled the ritual had gotten the nerve up and were going to smoke out a feeble attempt to smoke out our party to chase them away. 5 more of them perish before the party deals with them and finishes their long rest. On their long rest, on the closure of their long rest, they do go down back to the beach. They do find their ship and learn that indeed it was a Kraken that they chose to run away from, to hide from. Now they're in the submarine, and their next target, their next destination is Gundolin and Gunbarg, the port of Gunbarg, and they know that they will get to this port 3 days in advance of the Diliror. And so in these 3 days, Oloc makes a request of Gloin. He asks Gloin to scry on his family that Oloc believes has been captured and turned into by the slaving party, captured, and Oloc wants to know what has happened to his family. And so they sit down for this ritual. But despite feeling like the ritual was successful, Gloin finds no information. There's no one to scry for. Gloin discovers that these memories that Oloc have of his family doesn't exist, and Gloin uncovers layers of magic and curse that seems to be beholden to Oloc. And at first they find that his memories had been modified, and the family didn't exist, and he was actually a Githyanki. He is indeed a tinker mage, but his family never existed. It was placed there by some great magic. And not only that his body is not humanoid, it's actually Githyanki, this greenish, elvish, otherworldly type race. And so through layers of discovery, we learn that indeed he had been taken an assignment after his studies at the academy. He had turned to a life of adventuring, and then that life of adventuring turned to a life of mercenary, and then mercenary became a life of bounty hunting and mercenary and taking jobs where he could. One of those jobs was an assassination, and where he was hired by the crime lord Xanathar in Waterdeep, where apparently Oloc had been making his home base, this place in Waterdeep. And he had taken a job from Xanathar to assassinate the Zentarum crime lord Manchun, or clone of Manchun. But in his attempt to assassinate Manchun, he was discovered. He was caught by Manchun, and he was tortured. He was put on a large wooden table, as Gloin was able to see this vision of Manchun torturing Oloc and placing spells and potions and magic cursed on him. And through that conversation is when Oloc gave up the words Xanathar had hired him. And with all of that, Oloc, not only did his memories start to return to him, but his physical transformation. He changed from human to Githyanki, and all that would detail. And so he no longer looking like the Oloc of his human. He is reintroduced to the party as Oloc the Githyanki. About then, not long after then, is when the ship arrives to the port of Gunbarg. And then it was at the port of Gunbarg where they row into town, and they get onto the port and the wooden walkways, and the poles along the walk. One of the poles has an epitaph. One of the poles has an epitaph of Thomas Montague, husband, father, grandfather, one that got the way, and it has a fisherman's prayer on there. This is for this fisherman that Ruckus had gone out to kill, to satisfy his dark god, and he had put some coins in the bucket to pay tribute to pay the family for this man that he had murdered. And then from there they went to the Dragon Turtle Inn. And as they were entering the Dragon Turtle Inn, Oloc the Githyanki looks to the bar, and at the bar there is this green-haired, attractive lady talking to the bartender. The bartender has extremely hairy, full beard, full face, hair where hair's not supposed to be, and she is talking to this man, and her ring on her finger is glowing brightly red, and she probably has her crossbow in her other hand, probably on the counter, just resting there. But as they walk in, Oloc sees this and says, "I know this person. This person's Christiana de Mowbray, or Mowbray as I called her. As far as Oloc knew, they left on pleasant terms. This 28-year-old female half-elf fighter with green hair who is having an interesting conversation with this bartender." So that is where we left that group. One other thing we left with was the interest. We made our way into the inn as we were looking for accommodations for the night, because in the morning, Varinka wanted to go look for Arviturus's lair and maybe find something that she could take to convince Arviturus, to influence Arviturus, so that maybe they could have some treaty, as Varinka is led by the wizard in her ring. So that's where we left off. Oloc at the bar, the dead fisherman, and Varinka looking forward to, interested in going into Arviturus's lair. Not to mention, we have yet to settle up with our vendors. We have the Remoraz, and we have the Dillyroar figurehead, and so we have those things to settle up with. What will happen? We'll have to find out. All this and more next week. Please go ahead and hit the like and subscribe. No chores, no homework this week, I guess. But I look forward to next Thursday, and we'll see what happens. Until then, take care.